Okay, welcome everybody. I am going to be filling in for Mayor Walker for just a bit. He's stuck in traffic driving up, so we'll do a few of these kind of easy agenda items first, so that he can be here for introductions. So the first thing that we usually need to do is to have a motion on our minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes, and can I get a motion?
Move to approve the minutes as submitted. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and second. Any discussion? Usually isn't. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved. The next is everyone has in front of them our annual conflict of interest disclosure form. If you have anything that you need to disclose, you can fill this out, get it back to the staff after the meeting, or if there's anything you want to disclose here at the beginning of the meeting, now would be the time for that.
So this is our first meeting of the 2024-2025 Board of Directors. So we would ask everyone to fill this out, even if there are no conflicts, and turn them into me. You also have it digitally in the packet, so if you don't do it right now, or if you're online, just make sure to fill that out and get it into me. We'll do the form annually. We'll always have the form in the packet, so you can update it if need be. And then that item on the agenda at each meeting, if there's a particular agenda item that you have a conflict with, you can voice that during the meeting. Thanks.
Great. And then, like I said, we will skip over doing some introductions of our new board members and actually do the sorry, there is actually multiple sets of minutes. So we had our business session minutes on September 5th. And our
minutes.
yeah. I don't know that
That was all encompassing, but that's okay.
Hey, will that satisfy you, or would you like a second motion for the business session?
I initially interpreted that as all encompassing when we said the minutes. So
Okay.
I think we're good.
You know, and I did too.
Same.
And then did everyone have a chance to look at the packet where the orientation slides were, and they had in them a really nice handy list of all of our upcoming meetings, so you can put them in your calendar.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I just accepted all of them, the invites that Nick sent, and
Isn't it nice when all of a sudden you get like 15 calendar invites for a day? Just accept.
It's even better when you get 30 people responding.
yeah.
But the invites I sent out go through January. So far, once we've adopted this, you'll get another deluge of invites going all the way through next September. Once we've accepted this.
And we know that one's gonna change.
Right.
And most important, you know, make sure you put the St. George Conference in your calendar for the 16th.
Make sure you put travel time on that.
Make sure that you plan to bring your bike down. There we go. Do we need a motion to accept the rest of the dates? Okay, we have a motion to accept this calendar.
I move to accept the calendar.
I second. Thank you. Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, it's official. Look forward to Nick's calendar deluge. And I think it would be great if we could all try and accept them right away so that we can blow up.
Break the internet.
So then we'll move on to our ULCT boards and commission reports and appointments with a report by Liam.
Awesome. Cam said this wasn't an important thing for this meeting, but it's my mom's birthday today, so. Happy birthday to my mom. He said that's not an important thing to bring up at board meeting, but. Anyway.
Happy birthday to Liam's mom.
Thank
Do you
you.
not know your mom?
I guess not, yeah. Your mom was She's one of the 3 people listening to our board meeting.
Yeah. Hey, Liam, actually, really quick, we wanted to go over this really fast, right?
When Mayor Walker
When Mayor
gets
Walker.
to do that with introductions.
Excellent.
Okay, I'll actually do one. So soon. Okay, we have a couple of appointments that we need to get squared away. The first one is the State Records Committee. Our appointment is expiring there. Nancy Deans is the Clearfield City Recorder. You may remember in a previous meeting, we were planning to reappoint her but the Senate had indicated to all organizations that have an appointment to that committee that they weren't going to reappoint any of the individuals that were already serving there. So we came up with a new appointment. Staff is recommending that the board appoint Todd Sheeran, who's the city attorney in Harriman, to serve on the State Records Committee. Yeah.
Do we have any additional feedback besides they're just not reappointing? Our other appointee happens to be the police chief from my city. And so I reached out to him about his service and about Nancy, who, by the way, he gave glowing reviews to Mayor, said that Nancy was excellent and felt like she just so knew her stuff in terms of all of the grandma statutes. So is there something more to this story, or do they just feel like they need a clean slate?
What I will say before Cam gives the executive director answer here is we did get from staff that they thought that Nancy did a great job there. So it was nothing specific to our individual appointment, but I know Cam has maybe some more information.
Sure. Ultimately, we were told that they wanted fresh perspectives on the State Records Committee and the State Records Committee is getting more and more applications than ever before. In fact, just in their last meeting, they proposed going from a monthly meeting to or twice a month meeting. And even then, it's hard for them to keep up with all of the requests that are coming before the State Records Committee. It's also becoming more controversial. You're seeing more and more news articles about what's before the State Records Committee than ever before. And so there's a sense of frustration at the state level about how the Records Committee has been going. And that's why they told all organizations who had reappointments up this year that they wanted fresh perspectives on it. So that's why when we took a step back and said, okay, Nancy was fantastic. And I think really served with distinction. She told me it was a great honor for her, made her a better records officer to serve on it. And prior to Nancy, we had another city recorder who had served on it. But in light of the higher profile around the State Records Committee and some of the really difficult issues they're grappling with, we made the decision to recommend to you an attorney rather than a records officer, because actually on the State Records Committee right now, there is no attorney. They have the legal counsel from the AG's office, but the Records Committee itself does not have an attorney. So we thought it made sense to recommend an attorney to be on the State Records Committee. And remind me, there's 6 members of the Records Committee.
Yeah.
6 members of the Records Committee.
So half are up now and half are up. Okay. So they'll keep some continuity with the members that are not up. Well, thank you for indulging me in asking about that, because it did catch my attention knowing that my police chief is our law enforcement representative to that committee. Mayor, I can turn this back over to you. We were just going through Liam's reports because we wanted to hold off for introductions till you were here.
Sorry I'm late. I need to talk to Gruber. There's something wrong with the freeway. He's on here. I don't know if he is, but he needs to get to work. You know, they closed the carpool lane and made everyone merge about mid-valley and jammed it completely up. It's ridiculous. Anyway, welcome everyone. It's good to be here. I'm sorry my first meeting is late. I should leave an hour early. Where are we at? Are we at 2?
So we are halfway through this, then we'll come back and have everyone introduce themselves.
Okay.
So we just did presentation on Records Committee. Now let's do Watershed Council.
Yep, and I'll just be really quick on that one. We've had Mark Stratford serving on that for the last term, and the staff had reached out to us and said that Mark was doing a really great job representing local government on the Watershed Council.
I would agree that Mark did a good job. I think he'll stay.
Awesome. So that will be our other recommendation. So the staff recommendations are that the board appoint Todd Sheeran to the State Records Committee and Mark Stratford to the Utah Watersheds Council.
So moved. Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? I'll vote aye as well, and I see no opposed, so that motion passes. Now it looks like we're boards and commissions memo. Everyone got that?
Yep. So now Nick, can I turn to you for audit subcommittee, and then Jared will do amicus.
Yes, thank you. So you'll see in your orientation book, we have our financial policies in there. In those financial policies, we create an audit committee, which is one of the best practices recommended from the state auditor. We are looking for folks to serve on that committee. Must be a board member. There's no limit on how many serve. The board treasurer, Mayor Hales, chairs that committee. The main thing that group does every 5 years is runs the RFP process for selecting auditors. What we've added recently in our new financial policies is that they will also receive our annual audit before it comes to the full board, so that they can look through that and make recommendations. You can see in the policies that were included in your orientation packet, some of the other stuff they do, that this committee does, including if there's staff knowing of any financial impropriety, that's the group that's going to investigate it and make any recommendations as far as our financial policies go. So if you have a background in finance, or if you're just interested in serving on that audit committee, please just shoot me an email and we will get that together in preparation for our annual audit, which we will bring to the full board at our December meeting.
I think Mayor Hales is a good choice for that position.
He's great. Yes, he's a former executive at a credit union. He knows what he's doing when it comes to finance. So he's been great. He also signs all of our checks, approves our payroll, that sort of thing.
So you like you.
Of course we like him. With that, I turn over to Jared to talk about our amicus.
Yeah, so occasionally we'll have different cities or others request the league's involvement in litigation. The involvement would be to draft and submit what's called an amicus or amicus, however you want to say it. Tomato, tomato. And a brief that basically supports one side or the other and provides a new perspective, a different perspective that typically is not reflected in the litigation. In the past, we've had, I think, about 3 cities and the legislature request our involvement with different litigation aspects. And so in January, the board approved a litigation participation policy. So the request here today would be to ask if we could get some volunteers to be on that subcommittee. And what that subcommittee would do is work with UMAA attorneys, Utah Municipal Attorneys Association attorneys, and also staff and the executive director and deputy directors to provide feedback and path forward. So just looking for any volunteers from the board.
And Mayor, you've got a hand from Mayor Peterson.
Go ahead. Mayor Peterson.
Yeah, I'd potentially be willing to help out with that.
Okay, thank you.
How many do you need?
Chair, I volunteer.
Okay, right now we're just looking for who would be interested on the board. We'll do
I
that.
would be as well.
Okay.
With 3 of us. Anybody else?
I assume I'm there automatically, so.
Yes, you are by the bylaws, Raj.
You got a petition, Roger. Is that good? Is that good? All right.
Yep.
Let's go back up and have an opportunity let's give an
We
opportunity
just
for.
need to do a motion.
Oh, we got.
Do you need a motion for anything on boards and commissions, or are we good?
We
We
did boards and
we
commissions.
got the,
With the audit, Mika, do you need anything else on audit, or are you good?
nope, no, unless we are making these official recommendations right now for amicus. I think we can give people online and other people online an opportunity to just email Jared, and we can bring that forward right now.
Perfect. Okay.
But don't all jump at once for the audit committee. Remember, that's a good committee too.
All right, why don't
Send
we,
you a note, I have volunteer.
why don't we start with, go back to the front, start with introductions and get to know everybody that's here. I'm Mayor Walker from Draper. My first meeting and as league president, it's great to be part of this organization. All the years I've served in Draper, and I'm in my 11th year of being mayor, and I did 6 years on the council before that. So the league has always been an organization that's been there to help us, give us a great voice at the legislature. I know a lot of us have our own lobbyists that we pay to go up there and help on our issues, but the league is like the ultimate great organization to really have like a giant bulldozer blade through when stuff gets sticky. So we're fortunate, I think all of us that are members, that have been members for a while, we know the value of the league and the league army specifically when it comes to getting something done. And so as we go into this session, I don't think it's going to be any different or any more friendly than it's ever been. In fact, it might be worse, if it's possible. But as we look forward, we're very fortunate, I think, to have all the representation we have, our executive board and all our new board members that you're coming on. This is a great organization. It's one of my favorite that I've served on ever. I like our staff. Our staff can get data and information to people in a way that's useful, timely, and powerful. So very fortunate to have such quality folks that can drive our policy and the things that matter to our communities. And we're, for the membership dues, I don't think you can do any better than what we have here. So it's an honor for me to serve, represent our league and our group. One of the great honors I've had, and I appreciate it very much. And so that's me. Kate, should we go to the right?
Sure. Kate Bradshaw. I serve on the Bountiful City Council. I have been on the council for 6 years now. I feel like I've known Cameron since we were kids together at the council.
That is true.
And Justin and some of the others, because I spend my day job in government affairs at the state capitol. And so I get to spend a lot of time with our staff at the Capitol, and we have a contest to see who's the last to leave on Fridays. And it makes me feel really good about the dues my city pays, and when we have to look at dues increases, because I get to see the hard work the staff is putting in at the Capitol, the depth of the spreadsheets they make, one of which I know we're going to go through today. Because I do similar things for clients, and often they remind me I can do it better because I see them doing it better. So when I'm not city or state governmenting, I'm usually happiest if I'm out in the mountains or the foothills, biking in the summer, skiing in the winter. That's me.
I don't know what to add to all that. I'm Marcus Stevenson. I'm the Midvale City Mayor, and I'm almost 3 years in. And I think, as Kate said at the league, I skateboard in my spare time. So there you go.
Mark Shepherd, Mayor, Clearfield City. Mayor Walker, this is my 11th year as mayor and 6 on the city council before that, and 8.5 on the planning commission before that. So,
Glutton for punishment.
yeah, so if it's wrong or happening in Clearfield, it's probably my fault.
I'm Ben Nadolski, Ogden City Mayor, brand new to the board, brand new to the role of mayor, actually. Well, 9 months in, feels like about 4 years now. I'm just hopeful that I look as youthful as these two gentlemen.
Yeah.
As many years as you put in. I served 8 years on the city council before being mayor. My career prior to this was in working for the state, worked in the Department of Natural Resources, Division of Wildlife Resources, worked for and with the Governor's Public Lands Policy Coordinating Office, and worked in legislative affairs. So happy to be here. And in order to sort of disguise my mediocrity, I try to surround myself with greatness. So that's what attracted me to the league.
Wait, you get paid for doing this?
I do.
Oh,
Yeah.
doing it wrong.
Dude, I'm 9 months in. I got that figured out.
You might be the sharpest one here.
That's right.
I'm Mary Winch, representing Central Utah on City Council of Manti. And I'm in my 6th year of City Council, and I spent my career East Coast, West Coast, Upper Midwest, working for the federal government. And I found I had a connection with them and Justin. because they were upper Midwesters too.
I'm Dan Dugan, Salt Lake City Council, just started my second term in January. Background was in manufacturing and also the military with a number of years. And I've always thought that Salt Lake City needed to do a better job of working with the league. And I think when we realized that relationship is so important for us, along with the whole state. So it's been a pleasure to work with the league and learn, but also be able to give some input. So it's been wonderful.
All right, Justin Lee, Deputy Director. I oversee the advocacy, all the capital stuff. That's my area. Been in the league for about 3 years now. Prior to that, I was in the Lieutenant Governor's Office, Director of Elections. So been up in the capital world for a while now.
Jared Tinney, Legal Director for the league, and just advise staff and others on legal issues, also lobby at the Capitol. And
Work used to work.
I was just gonna go there. You were gonna bring that up. So I was at the amazing city of West Jordan, and before then, and or before now, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you.
Hi, Molly Wheeler, also Deputy Director of the League, focused on more membership engagement, although I do a dash of advocacy here and there. About 3 years at the League as well, and prior to that was working up at the University of Utah.
Nick Jarvis, I'm the Chief Operating Officer with the League. I have been here for just over 14 years now. Feels really weird to say that. Started as an intern and have done a little bit of everything. And now I run our operations, so everything internal. I collect your forms, I do finance, HR, that sort of thing.
Lauren Palmer, I'm the mayor out in Harriman. Came on with Marcus and several others just under 3 years ago. Originally from Price, got a big weekend. Price, a big weekend. Price, Utah. Spent most of my career prior to this in the hydraulic hose world, if you will, the Echo House of Hose, if you will. Before that, and then became a stay-at-home dad 7 years ago. Just led me here. So just happy to be here. Grateful to be here.
Dirk Burton, the mayor of West Jordan. On my second term, prior to that, I was in the city council. I am a master electrician, had my own contracting business for several years. And that's what got me into government, because I saw what government did for businesses. So I started attending meetings and but you know what? I know more about this than they do, and they're here. So here I am. Last week I was over at Cathedral Gulch and horse thief something, and I collected a few thousand goat heads in my bike tires. So I drove here today. Sorry. Sometimes you have to drive.
The shame.
The shame. Anyway, but I got to spend it with my grandkids. I've got 12 grandkids, and all of them went out there with me. So it was a spectacular event.
On bikes?
Yes, most of them had bikes.
Wow. Way to raise them right.
And the small ones had striders. So there were 3 striders out there, and there's bicycles. We had a great time. January 25th, I will be turning 65. And you're all invited to my party. It's a party like you've never had before. So block that date open. I don't have the invitations made yet, but they will be coming. And, you know,
Do you have to ride a bicycle?
no, but you're welcome to. One
You
good
need to
turn.
ride one from Manti on January 25th. Wear layers.
I dropped 2 of my granddaughters off in Manti on Saturday on the way back from Nevada. So
Excellent place to drop them.
it was.
Are they still walking back?
They're good. It was great.
Great. I'm Tiana Tolley. I'm a Park City Council member. I'm in my 3rd year on council. Very rare for Park City, but I was born and raised there. My family's been there since 1860. So we're probably one of the oldest families there.
4 generations of us still live on the same street, which is also very uncommon for Park City. My history is in something that will probably make you laugh, which is tourism technology. So I know a lot about the short-term rental side from the other side of it. That my family owns Red Banjo Pizza though. And so if you've ever been there, it's the oldest business in Park City that my grandma opened when she was 24. And so during COVID, I got laid off and went back to take over the business with my dad. So it's given me the ability and flexibility to serve on council. And I absolutely love being on council. And when I'm not doing council stuff, I do yoga, ski, hike, bike, trail run, all the outdoorsy things of Park City. So excited to represent Wasatch back here and be on the committee.
And we need a bike trail between Park City and Salt Lake City.
Okay, I will bike.
Yeah.
Not an electric bike though. That's my only, that seems to be the only thing that people talk about. Oh, cool.
I'm Seth Perrins. I'm the city manager of Spanish Fork. I've been there 20 years. I am the professional son of John Park. John hired me in Orem 23 years ago. And as an intern out of BYU. Been, like I said, Spanish Fork for 20 years, city manager for 8. And I represent all the city managers here on the board. January 22nd, I'll be turning 49. So I'll celebrate it with Mayor and go to his party and bring me a gift as well. But January's a great month. So.
Okay, awesome. Liam Farrell with the Utah League of Cities and Towns. I've been here for about 3 years, just like Justin and Molly. We all came about the same time, which was super fun. I help on some of the lobbying stuff, and I also run the local administrative advisor program with John.
And I'm John Park. I'm the director of the LA program. I'm with the League 2.0. I was with the League for a few years before my wife and I went on a mission. We've been back about 3 months, and then so excited about this LA program that we're running, and just excited to be here. My background is I'm a retired city manager.
Cool. Carson Eilers, I'm the policy director here at the league. I've been here 7 years. I started as an intern after I entered in the Capitol right out of college. And I've held a lot of different roles here. Nowadays, I do some advocacy and I do a lot of research. So if you get pesky surveys, they're probably for me. Yeah, it's great to have you aboard. Excited to work with you all.
We owe Slido to you, right?
Yes. In a good way. Yeah.
Angela Adam, I'm the operations coordinator. I just do all the day-to-day logistics, behind the scenes most of the time. Just around.
Katie Harley with the league, the events manager here. So I just do all the behind the scenes stuff with our events and sponsorship program.
Then Nick, do you want to just call names out?
Yeah, so we'll give a chance for everyone online to do an intro, and I'll just list off 3 names, so you're ready, and then we'll get the next 3. So why don't we go ahead and start with Councilmember Hinton, then to Mayor Hedgeland, and then to Councilmember Baird.
Hi, I'm Krista Hinton. I am serving in my 3rd year on Santa Clara City Council down in southwestern Utah. I'm new to the league and excited to be here and serve with you all. A little bit about me. I've just left a position with a law firm where I've been for forever as the operations manager, and I am now the communications manager at St. George Regional Hospital. And some things I like to do in my spare time, if I ever have any, is read a little bit and hang out with my little dogs.
Bailey Hedgeland, Mayor of Monticello. I'm just finishing up my first term as mayor. And I was on city council for 4 years before that. My day job, I like to say, is with Utah State University. I'm the associate director of development for our southern campuses. And I'm just excited to get more involved and kind of keep that rural and Southeast Utah voice going. And I do nothing in my spare time but work and nap. So I feel like I need to learn how to bike. And I will be 46 on January 29th. So it sounds like we're having a large party.
My name's David Baird. I'm out in Roosevelt, Utah. Been on the board about a year and served on the city council here for the last 6 years. In my spare time, I like to fish. My day job, I work as a project manager for the Bureau of Reclamation. And my history, most of what I've done in the past has been in natural resources. So.
Great. Now let's go over to Mayor Ramsey, Mayor Peterson, and Mayor Wright.
Well, good morning. I'm sorry I'm not there in person. I'm having an allergy situation. It started as an allergy and it's just turned into a thing. And so I cough and it sounds terrible. So I'm just staying away so people don't get nervous, but you can't get anything from me. Anyway, so I'm joining remotely this morning from home, but Don Ramsey, Mayor of South Jordan City. I am now an ex officio member of this board. I served on the board since 2019 and former president of the league. And I am the UEOC rep for the league. So that's why I'm here and I'm happy to be here with all of you. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Peterson. I'm mayor of North Logan and just finishing up my third term as, or sorry, not my third term, my third year as mayor. But listening to everyone else talk, it makes me worried that you never get out of public service. I jumped straight to mayor from Planning Commission where I served for 3 years. And also a recovering attorney. I did environmental litigation in Ohio for 9 years, and have kind of hopped around following my husband around Albuquerque and originally from Emery County. So Lauren, we were also really excited this weekend to hear about Price. And yeah, just super excited. This has been such a great experience for me to be on this board. I'm starting my second year on the league board, and it's been such a great experience. I feel like it's so impactful.
I'm Mayor Mickey Wright from Torrey. I've been mayor coming up on 3 years, and I've been on the board, the Utah League of Cities and Towns, about 18 months. In my spare time, I'm the IT guy for Torrey, and I'm the IT guy for Capitol Reef National Park. Otherwise, I try to go hiking and do stuff as much as I can.
Great, and then we have some staff online as well. Let's go, Meg, Roger, Todd.
Good morning, I'm Meg Ryan, and I have been at the league since Cameron was an intern. So I'm fortunate to still be here. I know despite my appearance, it doesn't look that way, but Roger and I are the veterans now, along with Mr. Park. I focus on land use support, used to work for cities and towns, worked for Park City for some time, live up in Summit County, and try to help planning commissioners and elected officials understand the deciphering of the law that comes down from the legislature every year in the land use area. In my spare time, I like to play with Molly's beautiful golden retriever named Steve.
That's true.
Oh, you're muted, Roger. There you go. Now it's the boomer, right?
Am I back now? Okay. Roger too. I'm a general counsel to the league. I also do work in taxation, public utilities. I've been with the league directly for about 30 years. Prior to that, I was general counsel of the state legislature, member of the state tax commission, and partner in the Salt Lake law firm, which I've added up. I think this will be my 48th year that I've been involved with the legislative process in the league. That is a sign I really don't have a lot of interest other than doing this. Appreciate the chance to work with you, and I'm always thrilled to see new mayor, city council people come on board.
Hi, I'm Todd Godfrey. I'm special legal counsel to the league. I work at a firm called Hayes Godfrey Bell, and our firm primarily represents local government interests. I've been associated with the league formally for about 5 years. informally for much longer with that. And I have great respect for all of you and what you do. I will never vote in the meeting, and that's the greatest thing in my life.
I think that's everything.
Everybody online, terrific. Well, thank you, everybody, for your service. As you heard from the introductions, this really is a who's who of local government leaders and experts. I started the league in 2006 as an intern, as Meg indicated. And I don't really have any spare time either, but spend it with my daughters as much as possible. And some of you will recall when my oldest daughter was born during the legislative session in January. So we'll add her to the January birthdays. If she were here, she would tell you January is her favorite month because it's her birthday, and it's her least favorite month because it's the session. But other than that, prior to becoming director, I've been director for 7 years. Prior to becoming director, I coached high school football and basketball and really enjoyed that in one of my schools. All the kids were in the juvenile justice system. So it was like living a Disney movie. If you've ever seen Coach Carter, that was very, that hit close to home because that was very similar to my experience coaching there for a couple of years. So I know, Mayor Nadolski, your family's been involved in coaching for years, and others of you, Mayor Walker's been coaching. And so I love that and view my role as executive director in many ways as the coach of trying to make sure we've got the right players on the field and have the right strategy in place. And you are all a vital part of that. And thank you on top of everything else you're doing. Thank you for being willing to serve on the league board for the next year. So that, Mayor Walker, we can.
And many of us are still coaching on Saturdays ineffectively from our armchair.
That's right.
At our various teams for their bad policing. All right, let's go next to we've got item number 4, which is a board nominations committee report. And we'll have Kate Bradshaw do that. And we're going to talk about, it's a discussion about studying the potential of adding ex officio board members to our board. So Kate, go ahead.
Sure. We had a great discussion as a nominating committee about an idea that we wanted to suggest for our staff to research and potentially bring us back a recommendation for action. And that is one of our candidates was our past president of the league, Mayor Silvestrini, and we have a handful of past league presidents that are still serving in office and still, actively engaged with the league. And we thought it would be a shame to kind of lose their institutional knowledge and wisdom and insight and the connections they've gained up at the state capitol from their city, but also from, their long service with the league on the board. And so the thought was that perhaps we ask our staff to study expanding the ex officio opportunities for past presidents of the board, if they're still serving in office, to attend league board meetings, receive the packets, if they're able and interested. And any of you that were on the nominating committee, I'm looking at you, Dan, trying to think if there are any others that were on the Mayor Shepherd, any other feedback on kind of that discussion we had and the recommendation to ask our staff to look into this maybe?
No, I think you covered.
Yeah, coming over.
I think the work it takes to build those relationships and get that happening is a valuable thing, and I think it would be wise to keep them around, keep that going in addition to the board members that are here. So I would be in favor of that happen.
It is in keeping with the theme we've established in introductions, which is once you serve, you have to continue serving forever. Can't leave.
So would you all like to, would someone, if you're interested, make a motion to kind of research a little bit? I guess we'll turn it over to.
I would be happy to make the motion. I would make a motion that we ask our staff to research and bring back potentially a recommendation on how to continue engaging past presidents as ex officio members of the board.
All right, so
Future consideration.
Motion by Kay, or a second? All right, any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor of having our staff research ex officio membership for past presidents, say aye.
Aye.
Are any opposed? I'll vote aye as well. That passes unanimously. Next item number 5 is our ULCT engagement report. Molly and Liam are gonna give us an engagement.
It looks like we do have a hand up online, from Mayor Ramsey on that previous item.
Oh, Mayor Ramsey, were you voting no? Mayor?
Oh, I don't act
He doesn't vote.
after you voted to weigh in, but if you don't mind, I just want to say, I agree with what has been said. I think there is value. I think once you spend that much time in leadership at the league, folks at the Capitol know you. I think it's a benefit to the league to keep some of the immediate past presidents, the ones that are still in office and still very active and engaged there. So I think that's a great idea. I had nothing to do with it, and I appreciate having an ex officio role. But gosh, we benefit a lot from keeping Mayor Silvestrini around. You know, that example. I'm like, yeah, I think it's a good idea. So anyway, thanks for considering that.
I just want one question. Was the ex officio position tied to still being in elected office?
Yes, so if they retire from office or leave office, then we still hope they'd be league friends, but not serving in this ex officio capacity.
Go ahead, Molly.
Actually, so, we're gonna start off with Liam.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna give a quick return and report on the local administrative advisor to this point. I think Nick's gonna pull up some slides here.
I'm gonna try here. We may have to keep it like this.
That's fine.
Okay.
We'll see. Oh, and I'll tell them awkwardly like next slide every 60 seconds. So just for a little bit of overview and background of the program, we worked with the City Managers Association, the Associations of Government, and the Governor's Office on this proposal that was funded in the 2023 legislative session. And the funding began in July of 2023. So we're just over our first year of the program, which is super exciting. The objective was to support the over 140 local governments with limited or no administrative staff. And it's really cool because as far as we know, it's the first one in the nation like it. And we've been able to report back on it to some of the other leagues throughout the country that are interested in doing the same thing. So, and that was the first slide, so you can go a couple forward. So, like I said, the objective was to really just enhance governance, efficiency, and effectiveness. We have a bunch of awesome people. This was at mid-years. We had a city manager, Mark, in Saratoga Springs, helping to guide a discussion on just local government administration answering questions. On the next slide, we got a total appropriation of just over $1.5 million. And how it works is in each association of government, they are given the funding for one full-time equivalent, with the exception of R6 having two, because they have about 40 or a little over 40 communities that qualify for it, where the rest of them are somewhere around 20. And then we have the two positions at the league, which is John Park as the program director, and then he is the program manager. On the next slide there, like I just kind of talked about, this is a little bit of how it's set up. We're doing trainings and curriculums. We're getting out and able to see them. We have people on contract that are doing a really awesome job of helping the local administrative advisors on the ground in their communities to do this work, answer questions. A couple of retired city managers or current city managers that are on there. And we've been doing webinars on some of the 101 type stuff and trying to keep a regular schedule of those coming up. So we have some budgeting ones coming up and specific planning type ones. And we also, Molly did the regional events and all of the AOGs up to this point that were really successful, and we were able to get communities together for some training and learning opportunities there, which were really awesome. Some of the program challenges that we had right away, they each serve 20 communities, so you can imagine trying to be a city manager to 20 different communities, that's a lot. And you can't really give as much service as you might want to. The hiring of the LAAs, we had a big range of the people that were hired from retired city managers, assistant city managers, planners, some with different state government background, and then some with no government background at all. So it really varied depending on the region of the state and kind of the hiring pool there. And yeah, some of the political sensitivities that were there, duplicating other local assistance programs that we're already running and technical assistance programs. So we've been very conscious of making sure that this is a program that can stand on its own and have its own successes. And then for anyone that wasn't aware, Gary Watcott was the program director at the time and passed away unexpectedly in January. So we were without a program director for about 6 months before John came on board. But we've had some really awesome successes on the next slide. GOPV asked for 1 project initiated in each AOG, which we thought we could probably hit. We ended up having 590 projects initiated across 114 communities in the state. So we definitely hit that target of 7. So that was awesome. And we've had all sorts of different programs. On the next slide, it shows a little bit of a breakdown of who's done what. And just to keep in mind, some of these different AOGs weren't able to get their person hired until a little bit later. So some had a later start and just other difficulties in the hiring process and getting them on board. So we've been really excited about the type of work that's been done. On the next few slides, I won't go into all of them, but they just give an idea of the type of projects that have been done. Ranging from securing grant funds and overseeing the grant process, developing an economic development plan, resource catalog of state government departments. They've done a bunch of working with the federal side of things, with even federal agencies and federal grants and our federal delegation. Let's see, on the next one, we've got updating personnel policies and doing compensation studies, updating their policy procedures. So really it's focusing on the administrative side of these cities that may not have the bandwidth to apply for grants, or maybe they can get the funding, but they really wouldn't have a way of managing those funds and making sure all the reporting is done, or updating their, we have a few laws that are passed every year. So updating their ordinances to make sure that they're in compliance with the state. We can just go to the end to the looking ahead, so you can skip that one. So we're fully staffed now, which is really exciting. We're in full swing. John's on board and is doing a lot of really great stuff of helping us figure out how we move forward and how we get everyone on the same page and make sure that we recognize that though it's a statewide program, in a lot of areas of the state are really different and facing different challenges, that we can be on the same page, sharing resources and being able to move ahead. So I know we're already running behind, so I'll just end with that. Are there any questions or comments or anything?
Sure, I got a question. So this is taking off, it's doing great, it's fantastic, I love what we're doing. Do we need to petition more money from the state to cover the cost of this? How's that working out?
That has been a really fascinating conversation. Cam maybe could also talk about the political sensitivities of that and where we are with our political capital. I don't think that we'll be asking for more funding probably this year or maybe super soon, but I think that's something we'd like to look at in the future, is expanding it. There's a lot of technical assistance already to local governments. So it's a conversation that's ongoing that way, trying to make sure that we recognize the successes of the different areas and that we also make sure that the program stays unique and that we're making sure that it's hitting the mark that it's supposed to be hitting. So I think we're on a great path to doing that, showing the successes. The governor touted it at our annual conference, and he also gave challenge coins at the R6 event to the local administrative advisor. So it's definitely getting good. It's noticed and it's getting some good PR, I guess. But as far as asking for money, probably anytime soon, I don't think that's going to be an ask that we make this.
On the ground though, as we have success, they would like to double, they would like to have more than one person. But we're still learning to take care of what we're taking care of. And there's always going to be requests that come from the ground that get more people, get more things done. But we need to be politically sensitive to that. And first of all, try to get the most out of what we have. So
We're gonna just jump in here. You as a league board have actually 6 objectives that the previous board ratified in the spring. 2 in the advocacy section, 2 in engagement, and 2 in operation. And within the local administrative advisor program bridges all 3 of those: advocacy, engagement, operations. And one of your strategic objectives is maximizing our political capital at the Capitol. We exerted a tremendous amount of political capital to get this program funded in the first place. Justin Lee was really an unsung hero behind the scenes. It's a great story sometime, not in a public meeting if you want to know it. But make sure we got the funding to start this program. First of its kind in the country. as Liam indicated, it's been very successful. It's ongoing money, but every year you've got to fight for the ongoing money. So part of the reason we want to return and report is knowing that this will be a top priority for us every year going forward with our political capital. And the second piece that Liam mentioned is there is a tremendous amount of discussion at the Capitol right now around technical assistance and should they merge programs and should they do this or do that? And we want to build on the success of local administrative advisor and not have it get eroded one way or another. So today was giving you a return and report, particularly for new board members, but then recognize that even though most of your communities around this table don't use local administrative advisor because you have your own full-time staff, this is a really big deal for our small communities and it requires political capital to preserve it.
Mayor Wright has commented online, I could not do my job of mayor without LAA. Brock Jackson is fantastic.
Brock Jackson is fantastic.
I got a phone call from a mayor in a small town, really small town in Utah County, and candidly, when this began, I thought, nobody in Utah County will need to use this. Kind of head in the sand thinking. And the questions that this mayor was asking were fantastic, and they were directed from the LAA and advising what issues that the mayor needed to be worried about, and they were doing some research on some things we had done in Spanish Florida. So I was super impressed with the dialogue that they were having, and then the confidence it gave her to be able to ask the questions that she was asking. Great.
Excellent. So two other components for engagement. One is not on the agenda, but I think, emailed or texted you all previously. This Friday, we're partnering with the Gardner Policy Institute on a breakfast for the University Impact Scholar and Dignity Index and Unite and everything else that is great. Tim Schreiber. I've heard back from all of you, but I just wanted to let you all know that we do have a few extra seats. So if there is anyone in your city that you would like to make sure is there with you, please let me know, ideally by like end of day today, just so we can make sure that we have those numbers. But if there's a member of your council, a member of your staff, anything like that, please let me know. We'd like to give you all first priority with those extra seats. And we're really looking forward to that event. It'll be a good one. Second is an update. With the 2034 Salt Lake, Utah Olympic Games coming, we've heard from a few of the host cities that asked if the league could serve as a bit of an informal organizing body for them to have informal conversations about what it's going to take for them to serve as host cities over the next decade, especially considering the fact that over the next 10 years, we are likely to have some turnover in administrators, staff elected, things like that. So we have been working with the Olympic Coordinating Committee and a few of those cities to kind of envision what this group could look like. Right now, we're thinking it'll be pretty informal and just really focused on those host cities and venues of what are kind of the brass tacks issues that they need to be looking at to host the games. As we look more broadly as a league, we know that this is something that all of our members are very interested in, and we want to be having conversations about what the games look like for all of Utah from a community engagement perspective, from a policy leverage perspective to address some of our bigger issues. But just to start with, we're thinking of just kind of really keeping this focused on this phase and this kind of informal group really just focused on the venue cities to avoid Mission Creek to start with. And again, we're kind of tailoring that out a little bit, and we'll be presenting that to you in November.
Let's go now to the big section of this agenda. It could take many moons to go through. Justin, are you ready?
I am ready, Mayor.
Go ahead.
And this will take many moons to get through, say at least 6 more moons until we stop talking about the next session. But so
we'll know on the 7th moon.
By the 7th moon, we'll know how it's going. But so I want to talk about Amendment D update a little bit, because this one has been strange for the last month and a half. It's not going to get less strange, but perhaps more strange. But so quick update. Let's run through the history really quickly. Legislature met in special session in August, passed a joint resolution that put a constitutional amendment that became lettered as Constitutional Amendment D on the ballot. This is the constitutional amendment that would have changed initiative law to say basically to affirm the legislature and also cities and counties could make any changes to a law that was passed via the initiative process. What happened was legislature wrote some language that went on the ballot. That language, as well as some noticing timelines in the Constitution, were challenged in court. The lower court voided the ballot. Language said it would be on the ballot but not counted. The Supreme Court upheld that. So as of right now, Amendment D does not exist. It will be on your ballots. You'll see it when it gets mailed out here in a week or so. But none of the votes will be counted for that amendment. So all of that, we've had a lot of discussions.
Does that mean they're really not counted?
That was my question.
That's a great question, and let me answer this from my old job. Yes, they really are not counted. There will be a lot of pressure on county clerks to in fact count it. But no, they just turn it off. They actually can turn off that question. I'm not gonna say every county will get it right. There may be some counting, but there should not be any kind of real statewide count that will let anybody know which way that would have gone.
So you're saying you can turn off? I didn't start anything.
Yes, I am saying you can turn off a ballot question. But, don't even.
Everybody up.
We have even more. Anyway, Amendment D is gone. One of the reasons we brought it up several times is there was legislative pressure, both to you individually as electeds and also to us as an organization to take a position on that one. Because of the Political Activities of Public Entities Act, we as an organization and you in your official capacities using city resources couldn't take positions on this, couldn't say anything on it, couldn't expend resources on it. So as a league, we couldn't take a position on this. Easier now because it's not even an amendment, we don't have to worry about it. Let's fast forward to the legislative session here in a couple of months. We fully expect this to come back in the legislative session. And so this is just me priming you to start thinking about this. We don't have to take a position right now, but we're going to start thinking about a couple of things. The Political Activities of Public Entities Act does not apply to legislation. That is a normal thing that we do, is we take positions on legislation. So when we get to the legislative session and there's a joint resolution out there to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot, we will be expected to take a position. And it would be extremely strange of us not to take a position to something if the language is the same that says a city may do this. For us to not take a position on a bill that says a city may do something is just unthinkable. I don't think there's any way to hide behind that, just putting that one out there right now. So we're going to have to take a position on this at that point. So again, we haven't seen the language yet, we don't know what it looks like, but I want you to just start thinking through what taking a position looks like on this kind of bill. The fact that at that point, we won't know what the ballot language is going to be. The law is still probably going to be there. They're going to write that. The language itself affirms city legislative authority, but I'm sure all of you as staff, we have feelings about this. A lot of our members are going to have feelings about this. So really just priming you for what is going to be a very exciting discussion as we get closer to session, as we start seeing language. Like I said, there's not really an avenue where we don't take a position on this one. If you look at the language on its face and you take everything around it from special session to court case and all stuff, just look at the language, we're going to be in an interesting spot about what this does to affirm our authority or not. So really, I just want to frame this one for you and keep you up at night a little bit, thinking about this one as we get ready for the session. But this is going to be something that we're going to have to deal with. This is going to be a discussion we're going to have. We're going to need to take this to LPC at some point and take a position. So just bringing that one that it's coming, getting ready. The politics around this are going to be tricky. So just getting that one out there. Not that we have, do not think about tricky issues all the time, but just want to get you thinking about that.
Where do you anticipate its gestation in the session? At the early set, at the end? Where do you think it's going to?
That is a really good question. It depends what other and other session prognosticators, feel free to jump in on this one. It depends what other really sticky things they have, because they tend to take really controversial issues right at the top of the session or they kind of sit at them till they get to the end. So
Justin,
it depends what else is out there. Yeah, Roger.
I think it's important to remember, they don't have to deal with it this session. I'm not saying they will, because they got 2 years before it
That's
goes
true.
on the ballot again. And the truth is, I don't know whether the pressure is gonna be to do it this session. Having rushed it, they got burned. And I think that there may be an impetus to say, let's wait and see what we got in a year from now. So I just throw that out. The pressure is not this session. The pressure is before 2026.
That's a good point, but everything we're hearing, Roger, is they are gonna do it this session.
I understand that. The question is whether they have the votes or not.
Yeah, and that's a TBD, we'll see.
And you think at the beginning?
It could be at the beginning, or if they have something else really distasteful they wanna deal with early on, they could sit on it.
Like state overlays or
Something. No, I think state overlays will be 5 to 7 weeks.
Yeah.
But we don't wanna get ahead of that one.
Could you see this taking over, like, this consuming everything?
I don't think this
In fact,
consumes
that,
everything.
Just kind of impacting us on other decisions because how we play that role.
I think it's really important to note that, yes, I think this could impact things. I don't think this impacts everything. The fact that it's not on the ballot, changes some of the calculus around that. If it had gone on the ballot, I think there'd be a different kind of pressure. But I don't think it's a secret that there are certainly members, of leadership and the legislature who are not happy with a lot of groups, and, how that ultimately impacts people, we'll see.
Just one final observation I'd make, at some point before the session starts, I think we need to have, or really strongly suggest, we have a very precise comment about what the proposal does, assuming we have some idea of language. The concept of it changes or it doesn't change. It's what was changed or what wasn't has been very, very sloppy. And I think we need to know with a little precision what we've got.
I think so.
My comment's gonna reflect the rose-colored eyes that I have. I don't wear glasses that are rose-colored. My eyes are rose-colored.
It's just innate.
Yeah, but throughout my time involved with the league, items start horrible and get to really good places because the process is how it is. I think as Roger just said, there were a lot of things that were experienced and learned with with the process that they followed. I wouldn't be surprised if we have some better language. And I think let's just be confident in the processes that we follow and the role that we play. And I agree with you, though, if it reads like it is and it says the city may, I think there's a place where we will have to say, you know, what we feel, and it being supportive of it probably is a position we'll have to strongly consider. But I think the language will be different. I think the process, I hope the process will allow for it to improve and give us something better that we can be more comfortable with.
I love that Seth has better angels on his mind.
You don't like my rose-colored eyes?
I think we need people that help us appeal to those better angels. I do think this will be a caucus discussion. They will set their decision and determination on this in their pre-session caucuses. And like the tactic they've taken the last couple of years with anything that has some controversy around it is to move it out the first week, have it on the governor's desk by week 2, so that they free up the remaining parts of the session for other things. It used to be the opposite. You churn through the hard things all 7 weeks, and then they'd pass the last week, usually being much better for that the process. But they haven't done that the last couple of years when they've taken really firm caucus positions. So I think we'll know pretty early on coming out of those December caucuses if they intend to use the process to improve and to address concerns and maybe even address who drafts ballot language, things like that, or not. We'll know that probably before the session even starts.
There's another variable. The legislature may well lose a second constitutional amendment. I think Proposition A's or Proposal A's status is in real jeopardy.
So stay tuned.
So stay tuned. So Two final things, there's one, so one, yes, we don't know what the language looks like, so to Roger's point and to Seth's point, we'll see if the language is the same or what that looks like. The second part is, and I'm gonna remind people of this, the ballot language is not the same as the constitutional amendment language. And the ballot language will not have to be drafted under any scenario, whether it's legislative leadership or led research, if they want to go back to the old process, doesn't have to be drafted until closer to the 2026 election. So there is that piece where even if we know what constitutional amendment language we are supporting or taking position on or not supporting, we want to know what the ballot language is. So there are some unknown factors there, but yeah, I just want to get you thinking about this because we have plenty of other things to talk about because it's going to come up, and if it's first of the session, we may have to take position and act on it very quickly.
I think the public and leadership are so far apart on this one. And I think leadership, when they write their language, I think they're gonna be so firm on their language, they're not gonna be willing to massage it like they normally do. If they're willing to massage it, I think we can fit in and work something in between there. But if they're not going to massage it, I think it's gonna be a real challenge for us.
So stay tuned, and this sets up the deliberation questions that we have for you here in the advocacy section for the next 45 minutes or so. There was a lot in your packet, admittedly. Kate and the officers texted me last night mocking me about how thick it was, but part of it was recognizing that some of you are attending the league board meeting for the first time. So we tried to clarify which handouts were for reference versus which ones are leading to deliberation. And if you look at the reference section on the agenda, you'll note there was the background article about Amendment D, which we just discussed, but then there are also board principles that the league board has adopted, because what we will often do as staff, before we have a bill, is we'll bring principles for discussion here, that once you adopt them, gives us the marching orders to know what the sandbox is. Transportation utility fee is a big deal that is going to get sticky this upcoming session, and we have a work group meeting on that later this week, so we're not going to talk about that in detail today, other than want to make sure you have the board principles. Homelessness is another issue that this board has weighed in on repeatedly over the last few years. Molly, I'm going to turn it to you just to give a quick update there on homelessness, both on the principles and on the mitigation fund rule, and then we'll dedicate the following 30 minutes or so on the housing piece.
Thanks, Cam. As Cam mentioned, this board has discussed homelessness pretty frequently. As he mentioned earlier, we really rely on the board to prioritize political capital, and homelessness has been something that the board has prioritized. Additionally, with the way oftentimes the legislation can move pretty quickly, we don't always have the opportunity to get everything before LPC. And so we have really relied on these board principles as our kind of sandbox as we engage in these different policy issues. They were adopted by the board in November of 2022, and we wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to see them as a board, and we were asking that in the November meeting, we ratify these positions so that as we move forward, we again know kind of the policy sandbox that we are taking. As you can see, a lot of it is really trying to focus on the role of cities and the role that cities do and do not play in the system. That is a tension that we're pretty frequently bumping up against, and making sure that while cities, it's appropriate to hold cities responsible and accountable for their role in the system, it is not to hold them accountable for the outcomes of the system writ large. So just so you have that, it also really ties into the mitigation fund and the role that cities play broadly, whether they are designated and identified shelter cities or whether they are cities without shelters. So we don't need to go over the principles fully in this meeting, I don't think, but we just want to make sure you have them. If you have any feedback on them between now and November, please let me know. As I mentioned, we were going to take a position, have the board take a position on these so that we again have our framework for how we're engaging in these issues. So with that said, if you wouldn't mind popping down to my memo. So with that said, this past legislative session in HB 421, or pardon, other homelessness bill, HB 298 created the Utah Homeless Services Board, to kind of be regulating and governing body over homelessness statewide. We as a league, or the municipality, rather have two representatives on that board. It's an 11-member board. We have Marcus Stevenson, Mayor of Midvale, who is also on our board, and Salt Lake City Mayor Aaron Mendenhall. This board was given a lot of tasks, to look at the system overall, but one of those was rulemaking authority for how cities qualify for the mitigation fund. The legislation required that host cities, shelter cities have and enforce camping ordinances, no camping ordinances, as well as pedestrian safety ordinances, which is kind of a legal workaround for panhandling. Courts have protected panhandling in the past, and so it's more of a time, place, and manner regulation, making sure that we're not doing that conduct on something like freeway, on ramps, off ramps, places where it's really dangerous to do so. The league and the shelter cities work with OHS to create or kind of suggest a rule that again recognize the role and responsibility cities have, but also not holding cities accountable for systems at large. And I would say that last month we were pretty comfortable with where the rule was. The board will be voting on the rule this Wednesday, and we've gotten word that the rule may change in a way that we're not necessarily comfortable with, of kind of having higher expectations of cities beyond just the role of camping and pedestrian safety. And so it's just something, again, we have to bring these issues to the board. It's a rule that Mayor Stevenson will be voting on this Wednesday. As of right now, the rule is not public, so we don't know exactly what it is. We've just gotten word that it may change from what was originally presented to the Homeless Services Board in November, and I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And Mayor Stevenson, I don't know if there's anything you want to add as one of the lead others on that.
Sure. Just frustrating, concerning, as Molly just said, that we put this rule together. All the shelter cities kind of for the first time ever spoke as one, had great support from the league. OHS staff was really responsive to our needs. And that we're, 48 hours from a vote and don't have new language in front of us that is apparently being proposed. One of the challenges that we're running into is specifically around the word improvement. The state has asked to see improvement in no camping and panhandling enforcement. That becomes challenging for a few reasons. One is Sandy gave a really good example of this. They just opened up the medically vulnerable shelter, that by having a shelter, they are going to see more incidences. So then how do they compare? How do they create an improvement from where they were? Or a city like Logan expressed, they really don't have camping or panhandling problems. And so how do they show an improvement? When really we know that these rules are geared towards Salt Lake City, and that doesn't always show. Not easy to create a rule across the board for every shelter city. One of the pieces of this that is also playing in is some members on this board who are appointed by the legislature and the governor are pushing for a new strategic plan on homelessness. So one was adopted a few years ago, and they're pushing that. Initially it was to adopt a wholly new strategic plan. Now it's an update to that. The board has not had any public conversations about this. There's been some one-on-ones that have happened, but there's a push to adopt this on Wednesday as well. Again, for me, that's pretty uncomfortable. But just so you're all aware, within that, there's language that says all municipalities in Utah will consistently enforce unsanctioned camping and loitering policies. As we've asked for details of what does that mean, the response has been, don't get hung up on the details, just be bought into the vision. But that's worrisome for me that they want that language in there. That will impact all of us. I don't know what that will mean if we are going to figure out those details later. So there's just some wonky things happening, and we'll see where that goes on Wednesday.
Absolutely, and just to recognize that, again, not every city has a shelter, but every city is paying into the mitigation fund. The majority of the mitigation fund is local contributions. There's also a good amount of state dollars in there as well, which we're really helpful, are grateful for, but just want to make sure that everyone knows that you're either hosting a shelter or you're paying into the system, and these system decisions do impact all of the municipalities.
Perfect. So we'll be proceeding with the resolution or with the policy principles as outlined and then bringing those back to you in November. So your homework as a board is I'll be asking for re-ratification or ratification anew in November. So if you have any feedback, get that to Molly. In the meantime, a lot of interesting moving pieces here. And thank you to Mayor Stevenson and Mayor Mendenhall for their advocacy on behalf of cities within that homeless board. And we'll have an update in Friday Facts and also the post-board email, which we'll wait to send this week until after the homeless board meeting on Wednesday. Okay, so with that being said, let's talk housing and land use. We're always playing multidimensional chess at the Capitol when it comes to housing and land use and the balance between state and local control. And let me quickly walk through the documents that you have in your memo. First, there's a memo entitled Planning and Visioning Efforts Underway in Fall 2024. So just in recent weeks, there have been several planning efforts, statewide planning efforts that have gotten underway. Justin and I have managed to make sure that we are on all of them. So we can try to bring some coordination and some alignment, and they're all being led by slightly different interests. You can see we've tried to summarize and simplify for you here who's leading it, what our involvement is as a league, and then what is the overall objective of each of those groups. But they're all trying to plan for growth and with slightly different outcomes in mind. That is on top. These 5 efforts are on top of the Commission on Housing Affordability. I will note, just in terms of a couple of quick updates before I leave the planning and visioning, with the state housing plan, there's a meeting happening right now with the steering committee. Carson and I had our first technical committee meeting last Friday, and Steve Waldrop authorized me to share a few things with the board, recognizing that Friday was the kickoff meeting. And I think these are very positive. The current guiding principles within that state housing plan start with collaboration over preemption. That was word for word in their draft document. Now, whether the final document looks like the draft document, that's what the next 2 months will hold. But I thought that was a really good start and a demonstration of the partnership we've been pushing. Collaboration over preemption, holistic and regional approach, collaboration across sectors, connected communities with a focus on centers, cross-issue policy coordination, focus on homes and families, long-term vision for the state, stakeholder transparency, opportunity inclusivity, and then impact of market interventions. So those are the guiding principles, which is where we were starting the conversation on Friday, and we were really pleased at how that dialogue got started. As you can see from a timing perspective, most of these groups are targeting to finish at least their initial report for January. So you're going to have a whole bunch of these documents coming to the Capitol in January. Last year, you had the housing audit that we brought back to this board, and for new board members, we included a copy of our response to the audit in the board packet so that you had that handy. But the good news about the state housing plan thus far is I think those principles are very similar to our principles, and we've advocated for a lot of it. They've also built what they call a tactic tracker, which they've organized over 100 different ideas in the housing space, many of which either exist within the MIHP arena or are things that we've seen cities do, and some have nothing to do with cities because they're focused on financial interventions or other things. So thus far, we're cautiously optimistic about where that effort is going. Mayor Ramsey is involved with Vision 2034 because of her seat on the Unified Economic Opportunity Commission representing the league board. Then you have the governor's transition team and the Housing Capacity Infrastructure and Market Study also had their first meeting last week. And we've made sure to have people from a greenfield city, a redfield city, and an infill city, all bringing that perspective around infrastructure on that group. Prior to us pushing back to get those 3 people in that committee, there were no city people on that committee, but now there's Justin, me, and then the other 3, and then of course Utah Rising with the Salt Lake Chamber. Now, again, that's all on top of what's being discussed at the Commission on Housing Affordability, hence the multidimensional chess. So there's also a memo on the Commission on Housing Affordability because there's a slightly different timeline there. The Commission on Housing Affordability is working toward November 5th, which is election day, but working toward November 5th to determine where is there consensus and where is there not consensus on a whole slew of topics, many of which we brought to the board and to LPC. So this board will meet the day before. And part of the reason we separated board from LPC in October, November was for this very reason, to make sure we had a board meeting the day before the Commission on Housing Affordability. So today we're starting the discussion, organizing the time and other things. We're starting the discussion, but know that when we meet again on November 4th, we need to know as staff, do we have consensus on these concepts or do we not? So we can report that back to the co-chairs and to the full commission. So with that being said, we identified four discussion questions for you. We're not going to get to all four of them today. We're definitely not going to do the fourth question, but questions 1, 2, and 3 do go together, and they're tied back to this worksheet. And this worksheet, I want to thank Cassidy. She's on her honeymoon this week, but she put this together before she left. So again, try to help us and help you as we work through the different policy concepts that are out there. The pink side is the lead board principles. And then on top is lead direction around just preemption and the role of state and local governments. And then in the green is one of the CHA subgroups, looking at condos, revolving loan fund in legacy cities, short-term rentals, vacancy tax, et cetera. And then blue is the publicly owned land. On the green side, Carson, can you take 45 seconds, just give a quick update on where we're at on the short-term rental data?
Yeah, absolutely. So 2 years ago, we contracted with the Chemistry Gardner Policy Institute to do a deep dive study on inventory and the number of short-term rentals in the state, because prior to that, we were kind of all operating in a black box. So we short-term rentals there even were, and what impact they had on housing. So that was really impactful conversations over the last 2 years. Ultimately, no legislation has been passed, not so much in part because of us, but there's been controversies with other groups in that space. So this year, we wanted to, recognizing all the housing pressure that we're feeling, we wanted to update the study. So we reached out to the Gardner Policy Institute to do that. And we have a final draft. It's not been published quite yet. We wanted to share with some stakeholders first. But the studies are really pretty impactful, and just for reference, the study from 2 years ago found that in 2021, there were 18,743 short-term rentals operating in the state. That number grew by 39% to 23,428, which is approximately 1.9% of the state's housing inventory statewide. Now, that's obviously more concentrated in certain communities. Summit County has the most short-term rentals per housing units, with the numbers are 23.8%. So almost 1 in 4 homes in Summit County are being used as short-term rentals. And obviously that impacts housing availability there more than some other places. So now that we have this data, we'll continue to share it with our short-term rental work group to try to navigate policy forward. The direction we've heard from members previously is, while we acknowledge that there is a concentration of short-term rentals in certain communities, even communities without a lot of short-term rentals are concerned about the impacts for the whole state and want to help their communities that have the more acute problem deal with it. So this is a major issue for us in the housing space, and we'll continue to work to try to find some policy direction forward.
Could you say again how much the percentage has increased in the last 2 years?
So 39% in the last 2 years.
Wow.
And I'll add, just Park City 84060, 70% of our homes are second home or nightly rentals, just for the town over the 22.
70%, 70?
Yeah. And a lot of people are not renting them nightly, but just 70%, about 70% come into paying second homeowner taxes versus primary taxes. So it's staggering for sure.
So we got that data Friday afternoon, after we already sent the packet, and it's still not public yet, but you're the first to hear the top line data, and we'll be sending out the other stakeholders soon, and then figuring out the policy approach. So
how many units was that again? The number of units?
23,428 statewide. And the study will have a closer breakdown. They also, this year, pulled in housing data for all the census tracts in the state. And so where the previous study was more just focused on the inventory, this study will take a closer look at housing plus short-term rentals and where they overlap.
So one of the.
Almost half the housing crisis.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a perfect one-to-one ratio, but if the state is really putting the pressure on, we need availability, we need supply, period. You know, and then not every short-term rental would be an appropriate house, but it's certainly an avenue where it's putting pressure on the shortage.
So in a
But it's
moment.
also just not, spread out evenly to what we need the housing to.
Right.
You know, it's only 1% or so of Salt Lake City has short-term rentals. But it's a high number, but just, you know, the relationship with the city is really small compared to some.
But another factor that we are not in charge of.
Right.
Right.
Another factor, we didn't do this part.
Right, correct. And there,
Well, keep that.
Because we didn't zone properly.
Well.
so there are several policy,
Except for we can't enforce our zoning with them.
Yeah, exactly.
so there are several policy levers to potentially pull, one of which being what the mayor and council member just referencing around zoning enforcement. But again, the data is hot off the press. It's Friday, still not public yet. So we'll bring that back for consideration. We have basically daily meetings on various housing subgroups. Last week, another one of those daily meetings was on trying to unlock barriers to condominium development. And particularly for our center development, we don't want all of our centers to just be completely filled with rental housing. We want to have an opportunity for ownership, and it's also a good way for starter homes is to get them through condominiums. And there are lots of market reasons why condos don't work. That said, there was a bit of a breakthrough at the meeting last Wednesday where the discussion and that this, we're recognizing this is, that the league is a public entity, this is a public meeting, okay? But recognize what I'm sharing with you is a behind the scenes discussion, but I was asked to bring it back to our members for consideration. And the behind the scenes discussion was, is there a way for the state of Utah to provide some sort of secondary insurance, which would then reduce the risk for developers to build condos? And if there was, then would cities be willing on the zoning side to zone for more units, higher height, and other things that also make the condos more financially viable? And that was the question that was posed to me on Wednesday. I said, well, based on our board principles, I could assume that the answer is yes, but I want to bring that back to the membership, because this really does get to that piece. If the state steps in and does X and reduces risk, and developers say, okay, we could make this work, but the buildings have to be bigger, our city's willing to zone for those bigger buildings. So Carson, will you pull up the first Slido question? As in, yeah,
It's back.
it is back, because again, trying to get your feedback and think both about your individual city, but also organizationally and all cities.
Cameron, did they give you an idea of what do they mean when they say higher? Because I read through the packet last night and I was like, well, 1 story, 2 story, 10, like what
So
what pencils?
This also presupposes that the cities have stopped this in the first place, and we have not. But it's pretty-
Well, yes and no, yes and no. So this is where it does get a little tricky, and we're trying to navigate this because there are examples, and I'm sitting next to one right now. where-
I got one for you.
Yeah, I know you did, where cities have done unlimited height and the market doesn't respond.
Unlimited density.
Unlimited density,
At the same time.
but there are other places where the city has capped the height. And by capping the height, what the builders are reporting back, for what it's worth, what they're reporting back is the ownership, it's much more expensive to build the owner occupancy than it is to build apartments for all these financial reasons. So we need more mass in order to make the condos work. Now, that could be, well, we didn't get into details of it, it's 1 story or 5 stories, but that was the question is there a willingness to explore what that would look like, where a city could essentially do a condo overlay over your multifamily areas, so long as they're owner occupied units and affordable units, because what you can build right now are luxury condos, but it's hard to make it a market rate condo pencil.
You know, maybe it would be, that's on the side of, but, you know, Salt Lake City has already given that incentive. Hey, you know, if you do this, we'll give you an extra floor. If you do affordable housing, we'll give you an extra floor, we'll add more density, different things. But again, the market also takes a long time. You know, these were just enacted this past year. And the market's not gonna change overnight, and developers are gonna see this and go move forward. Just like we've added to single family zoning areas, you can have a fourplex now. 2 of them have to be affordable. Well, that's just this past year, so that takes time for someone, you know, to buy a place, develop it, sell it, and that's one off, and that takes 5 or 6 years. So the state also has to realize that this takes time to get somewhere.
True, and that's where the conversation does get into that financial piece.
Yeah.
Because if the state does not help on the financial side on the condos, it almost doesn't matter what you do on the zoning side.
Right.
But that's where we're trying to figure out what is the path forward. So Carson, can you just make sure everybody knows what they're supposed to do here?
Yeah, so to clarify, we're gonna use Qualtrics instead of Slido, and we're gonna send this link out again after this meeting if there's anything else you want to add. But the first 4 questions will just be the discussion points in the board packet. So those should be pretty familiar, and it's just a text paragraph. You can fill it out at your own pace, or as we kind of discussed it, if there's things you want to share during the meeting, you can just share them as well, and we'll just compile all the feedback that we hear to try to summarize your feedback. There'll be a second set of questions about funding. So we want to just go through the first couple about these discussion prompts. So we'll discuss the funding ones afterwards.
Yep, exactly. So let me walk through questions 2, 3, and 4. Again, they are the deliberation questions that were on your agenda. But at the Commission on Housing Affordability last week, there were several, including the legislators, who said, would the league ever support a proposal of a state overlay? And I said, well, tell me exactly what you mean by state overlay. And Seth, I'll use Spanish Fork as an example. I shared with them the ordinance, your quality communities ordinance that you guys recently passed, where Spanish Fork has done an overlay in their city, where the city is offering density bonuses in exchange for certain outcomes by the developer. So I said, if you're asking the state overlay, if you're talking about it in the context of Spanish Fork did an overlay that is trying to meet these objectives, or the state creates a tool like the FIZ, we've been on board with these concepts for a while. If it's the state does an overlay and the builder meets the criteria around ownership and affordability, and thus Harriman has to automatically approve it, I said that's a different animal. I said, but we have board meeting on Monday, and we can ask the questions these 2 different ways, because at the end of the day, the argument coming back from some of the other stakeholders is, if the state said you're guaranteed an additional unit above and beyond what Harriman's zoning is, so long as it is deed restricted to be affordable and owner occupied, the argument is that's enough of an incentive to help a builder achieve that. But it does take that decision away from the city. What we've countered with is what question number 3 is trying to get to of, here are the objectives, but it's still left to the local governments to determine where and how to do it. So again, using stationary plan model, right? So in the memo that we sent you, we referenced stationary plans because on section 4 of the memo, it references context of past ULCT efforts and positions. And we did support the stationary plan bill because that was state objectives, but left to the local governments the flexibility to figure out how to plan and how to zone. And the Clearfield station and the Midfield stations and the Ogden stations all look different. So you all have the state objective, but you're all approaching it slightly differently. So we don't have to answer this question definitively today, but the reason we brought these deliberation questions up, and we're doing it through Qualtrics, is we wanted to give you the context, give you a chance to answer the questions, and we're going to send this back out in the post email, so you've had time to chew on it, go back and talk to your city, and talk to your other colleagues, and we'll gather more feedback from you electronically, because 2 weeks from today is LPC. And ultimately, as these proposals are working their way forward, we'll want to have that broader conversation to LPC, but we want to give you that chance to give us that initial direction. So let me pause there. Are there follow-up questions about the deliberation questions 1, 2, and 3?
Well, number 2, if they would come to the city and work that out with the city and then designating the location and they work together on finding location and how it's going to work, I would say yes. If the state just comes in and says, we're going to do it and here's where it's going to be, without asking the city first, then I would say no. But if we work together and we will be willing to work together, then it could be successful.
Well, and that's the sort of nuance we hope you'll put into the Qualtrics here, because that's what we're trying to figure out is what does the proposal look like? In the worksheet, we highlighted in this light purple, the small lot MIHP menu requirement, small lots by right, mandated +1 bonus density through detached ADUs, and by right density of affordable ownership threat if, I should say if instead of by right density if affordable ownership threshold is met. All 4 of those have come up in the Commission on Housing Affordability in recent weeks. And there are arguments that are being made about how they will result in more affordability and result in more ownership. And those are our principles, right? So what we're trying to find is that line of, yes, these may meet our principles, small lots by right, by state affirmation. That may be consistent with our principles, but we're still going to say our housing principles, but we're still going to say no because
we need to be the ones that make that decision.
Right. If that is our line. Yes. And if ultimately that is our line, then that's what we want to clarify over the next couple of weeks. And then you'll see outside of that purple box is the city initiated ownership tool where again, it's the city's making the decision, where you have the state objectives and the city's making the decision to meet those objectives. Mayor Walker.
So the overlay that you were talking about in the committee is not an overlay for more apartments. It's an overlay only for owner occupied buildings. Is it 100%? If they do this, the overlay concept is 100% ownership or is it a mix? I'm not supposed to swear. He told me to drink a little more water, but I just want to get, you know what I'm saying? I mean, the overlay concept, I don't like it at all, but if it's just a mix and they're gonna build more apartments, guaranteed it's 100% or what's the concept?
Yeah, I think that is an excellent nuanced question for which I don't yet have an answer.
Okay.
Because what I've heard Mayor Walker say repeatedly.
I was gonna say it is, go ahead.
Well, no, I wasn't gonna quote what you were likely gonna say. It's just, what you were gonna say was to be a 4-letter word. I was gonna say diplomatic. Okay. That's Seth's role for the next 12 months is the hand on the shoulder, but if there was a state overlay, but all the units had to be deed restricted to be owner occupied and affordable, is that worth pursuing? If the state's the one making the decision, like, does that threshold make it worth pursuing? Or is the threshold first, who makes the decision? And that's the line, and regardless of what they do.
I'd rather be the city making the decision, but then it's 100% ownership. Maybe we make our own overlay. We're not mixing the apartments because that doesn't get us to the governor's goal.
Sure.
Yeah, and Mayor, I'd say, and that's part of the calculus is kind of, that's what we're trying to figure out the line is, if the state is saying, city, you have to do this, there's still a mandate there. But if you have, it's a question of flexibility. How much flexibility do we have to pick where it is and what the parameters are around that? That's what we're trying to figure out is, if the state says you have to do this, but you get to pick where it goes and what the parameters are, what's our line there? Or the line, once the state says this is the parameters, you still get to pick where it goes. You know, which one do we like the most, or which one can we live with? Which one are we fighting? That's what we're trying to figure out on all that. And Cam's right, we don't know exactly what the proposal looks like yet. So we're trying to figure out what those different component pieces are.
And here's the other piece of the multidimensional chess. As I look around this room, we have a lot of tremendous stories to tell of how cities are planning for growth in a really responsible way. Now, when I look online, I can, same thing. I had 2 conversations with 2 different mayors in 2 different urban counties last week, where they both acknowledged to me face to face, I know our city isn't doing our part because we're only zoning for traditional single family housing. And these 2 mayors said to me, can you help me figure out a way to communicate with my public and kind of change the narrative in my community. And these were two communities in the urban area that have a different story to tell than a Spanish Fork or a Draper or Park City or a West Jordan or Ogden or any of the other communities around here. So we represent everybody. But that's part of the consideration here as we're navigating over the next month between now and November 5th. So yeah, other questions? We want to use this to deliberate, get discussion.
And that's a key point, because there are a lot of cities, I look around this room, that are doing this already and trying to accommodate this. And then there are those that are not doing anything to accommodate it. So-
Which is a minority, a small minority.
Small
but they
minority,
do-
but it's what gets in the news, and sometimes they're the same city that might be close to a leadership person or whatever it is, but gets into the capital, and they're like, see, this city's not doing it. The whole damn state needs to be under on.
He doesn't need a shoulder on that one. That one's really not as forward.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah, it's just a thing that holds water back in a reservoir.
Which is really what the league does.
Are you holding his water?
Well, got it over here.
So, Cam and Justin, I know you guys already get this point. But and we'll do your best in all these negotiations you're in. But it always feels like the goalpost moves on us.
Yes.
And I do have some hesitancy in saying, yes, we can negotiate on proposal 1B, but not 1A, or we find 1C to be slightly acceptable, because every time we do that, then the next, it's always bigger and more and bigger and more. And all of them to me seem to erode the most important principle, which is local control. Our residents being able to have locally elected people who know and understand their communities and can help our communities put projects where it makes the most sense within our communities. And so I just want to express that overall concern that the goalpost always moves in every session. It's more, and we don't seem to be seeing any. I still feel like we're not seeing anything from the development side, the property rights coalition side, in terms of what are they actually delivering. We have made so many changes over the last
Damn many.
So damn many changes over the last 5 sessions. I am unafraid of reservoirs the whole day. And other 4 letters. And we're just not seeing that, but we continue to be the target and the thing they push on, maybe because we're there and available to be pushed on. So
Can I just echo that? Because I look at these discussion questions, and the very first one about just my secondary insurance, that is a tool that the cities can use. The rest of those are policies that the city should enact. The whole idea that the zone, incentive of increased density, increased house, height, change setback rules, all that is a city can control, and we should take ownership of that. The tool that we can help us would be the secondary insurance, because that's what, developers always say, oh, we can't get that. But the rest of that stuff, cities are doing a lot of stuff, and it also takes time. Back to the whole, we've broken record there on, hey, this isn't gonna change overnight. And I think they want that change overnight, and they're not seeing any policy change or any housing changes overnight, and so they want, you're not doing enough. Well,
So a couple quick points just to keep in mind. If you watched the presidential debate or the vice presidential debate, both presidential campaigns are talking a lot about housing policy, and a good chunk of that is around local zoning. Just last week, there was this US Senate hearing about housing unaffordability and zoning, and that is all the way down through all levels of government and everywhere in the country, right? So there's this inherent pressure that just never goes away, that you're also hearing from your constituents, right? About the cost of housing, and there's a lot of factors that are outside of our control collectively, and certainly outside of our control at local government level. But unfortunately, as long as there's still a housing shortage, we're going to be having these conversations, and that's why they're showing up in all of these other visioning efforts. So what we've been trying to figure out is, what is it that we can make sure we are doing, so we can say we are at the table as partners doing what we can do in our lane and in our sphere of influence.
Do you think
a lot of stuff that we can't
we should
control.
do housing
So that's the first piece, is just that national pressure is everywhere. The second thing, I never thought I would hear the development community openly talk about deed restricted, affordable owner occupied unit, or deed restriction period, and then affordable and owner occupied. And I hear it in every meeting. So when the conversation comes up of like, what are the developers wanting to do? The fact that so many of them have said, we are willing to deed restrict units, to me is pretty staggering. And if you look at the tools that we passed last session, the FIZ and the HOPS and Walter's 572 funding, all of those are tied to deed restricted units, which means none of those tools work unless a builder is willing to build deed restricted units. And thus far, there've only been a handful of examples of that,
And
but
it's
it hasn't
limited
been.
amount of units too, usually.
Yeah, there's a percentage.
Like 7 out of 200.
No, actually, like
That's
the
a meaningful-
Walter funding was 60%.
Yeah, it's a meaningful percentage.
Yeah, it's a meaningful percentage.
I
And,
mean, what's been done though?
what's been done,
On the
yes,
ground.
prior to this past year, right? And so that's where there's a lot of discord, frankly, in the development community, because they're anxious about this policy trend around deed restricted, affordable owner occupied units. But some of their organization are pushing, is like, no, let's have that conversation, because they are concerned if there was a state bill that required X and the result was more corporate owned housing units being built and rented, that it doesn't solve the problem and it blows up any opportunities to solve the problem in the future.
So to Mary Walker's point, though, we're not, enough time hasn't passed that we're seeing any of the tools they've used. And so instead we just move the goalpost without seeing if it works. And I do have some concerns that it's pretty potentially administratively burdensome for cities to be the ones in charge of vast amounts of deed restrictions that we're policing for.
We have no way to police them.
So I hear you, Cam, and I have just the utmost confidence about you, Justin, in all of these negotiations, but I didn't want to leave this meeting without expressing just as you guys saw on Friday when we chatted, my frustration of the continual movement of the goalposts.
Do we have a?
That's what that symbol was, Justin. That was
Lovely
goalposts.
goalposts. I
That
got
was goalposts.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's cool. Now I'll know that in the future.
Do we have data? So last year, at some point in the session, I feel like we put together a really good document that was detailed. These are all the things that we have done and that we've been collaborating on. And that, in some conversations that I had with legislators, I heard them parroting back all the things that we've done. Do we have, or can we get stories, that data of what Kate's talking about? There are things that our cities have done from legislative sessions past, in 2020 and 21 and 22, et cetera, that we have done that haven't yet been built for whatever reason, or that have been built now, but barely, that they're starting to come online. We've had significant efforts with MIHP and policies that have gone in place. And I am just barely, right now seeing the fruit of my first MIHP, but I'm seeing it.
Yeah.
And so I don't need to move that goalpost if we can take that deep breath, which nobody will, right? But if we can start talking about those success stories and point to, look here, it's coming, give it a chance with specifics.
And I agree with Kate. I almost think we should take the position of not moving it goalpost until but the next point being, some of the policies they've enacted, like all the money they put aside for down payment assistance doesn't do anything because there's nothing to buy. So what's that? Maybe one of our positions is they reallocate, they want to spend money, make it valuable, build infrastructure to the units so they can get built.
Well, frankly, I've said it before, we need to take the stance. Not just take a stance against, but we need to bring the idea. We have the tools in place. We've seen them. We've got the HTRZ, which we're just now, after how many years, Cam, that you rolled out the HTRZ? We're just now starting to see that come about and develop. We just last year rolled out the HOPS and the FIZ, which will probably take another several years to start bringing. Well, why don't we go back with those and say, look, you're talking density. well, you passed a HOPS and a FIZ and those address a little bit of home ownership. But you brought in an HTRZ 4 years ago, because we gotta have housing, but that's 100% rental almost around an HTRZ. It's dense. Well, why don't we alter that and say, okay, let's bring this into the HTRZ. Let's bring home ownership into the HTRZ. If you want to change some things, well, then change the HTRZ and bring home ownership into it. Don't add another program, something that we have to monitor. But I think it's gonna take us writing that and saying, here's our solution. It's written. This is what we want.
Plus, there's a lot of state land. I could think of a large parcel in my city.
Yeah.
That could be home ownership, but it's slated right now for rental, so same concept. I think
So let me jump on that because we're running short on time here and I want to make sure you have a chance to fill out the other questions on Qualtrics. Again, we'll send this link out to you for your feedback later this week too. But the governor has given the direction to all state agencies to inventory all of their publicly owned land, to identify areas that could be utilized to develop housing, but with a laser focus on affordable owner-occupied units. And condos has been a big piece of that because of the location of a lot of this land. I had a meeting with Carlos Braceras of UDOT last week, where he shared with us the initial data, and it's not public yet, so I can't share it. But there's a surprising amount of underutilized state land that the state is currently looking at. Well, we've had our Your Land, Your Plan program for the last couple of years where we've been trying to help cities think through your publicly owned land. But I expect this is going to be a huge focus going into the session, as the state will say, we're looking at all of our state-owned land and we want other local governments to do the same, and then identify areas that could be used for housing. And when I say local governments, that's school districts, it's counties, special districts, et cetera. And then figuring out how those pieces
we
go
mean
together.
ownership housing. Or just
That's
all
the governor has instructed every agency to identify the land, and then he's instructed Waldrop to start thinking through how do you convert that land to deed restricted, affordable owner occupied housing, which would need legislation in some form or fashion to do. Okay, so that's another deliberation question. That was question number 4 that we want you to fill out and give us feedback, because we're going to be working on proposals here for LPC in a couple weeks, and then back to you on November 4th, the day before that shop. Carson, you said we need people to exit out and re-enter.
Yeah, so if you, I'll just.
Yeah, we just explained that.
Go ahead, answers.
Have they talked about the definition now of affordable? Or of at least changing that definition, because if their mentality is still, we're now talking deed restricted, but the mentality is still 450 and below. We're not addressing affordability.
So keep in mind that the definition of affordable.
I mean, we'll give you $20,000 down on your first time home buyer, but you gotta buy something at least $450,000.
So your city manager's calling me, by the way. He must
Must be listening in.
Yeah, he's calling me.
Tell the mayor to shut up.
But
Sorry, Carson, did it wipe out all of our answers?
No, your answers will be saved. We added one more funding piece, so.
Yeah.
Because mine were brilliant, and I wanted to make sure they were safe.
Yeah.
We also have a comment,
yeah, if I see Jessica's, and I think people can read it for themselves.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I think you've got the 4 deliberation.
Oh, I like that.
I knew you would. So there's the 4 deliberation questions, but then there's a 5th question we're asking about funding. Governor Cox is working on his budget proposal, which will be live at the beginning of December. Steve Waldrop, Ann Wayne Niederhauser, and others have asked for our feedback for where we'd like to see the governor prioritize state dollars. As a reminder, last year at this time, we spent a lot of time talking about the state infrastructure bank. And if the state would put money in the state infrastructure bank to unlock the 190,000 units, what that could mean for affordability and home ownership. And even though the legislature did not fund the state infrastructure bank, those conversations led to what became House Bill 572, where the state reallocated $300 million to help finance deed restricted affordable owner occupied starter homes. Now, Barry Shepherd had asked about the definition of affordable, and I have a chart upstairs where we laid out all of the different housing tools And yes, the definition of affordability varies depending on which tool you're looking at. Sometimes they're tied to income, sometimes they're tied to the median house price, and sometimes they're just tied to the 450,000 direct number. And that was something we brought up throughout the session last year, is we need more consistency of definitions, and that's something Steve Waldrop is looking at with our help this offseason. So the question that we need you to look at is on the financing side of how important are some of these different potential financial tools to us as an organization. So there's still the first-time home buyer assistance program, though we know the governor doesn't want to extend that. But there's the condo program that I referenced briefly. There's revolving loan money to help cities who are currently investing in rental property to buy them, renovate them, and sell them to first-time home buyers. This is the Ogden model, but a lot of other cities, or several other cities, are doing it. Steve Waldrop's really interested in it, trying to decide if it's worth making the ask of the legislature to create a state revolving loan fund for that. There's the technical assistance piece, which again, we want to keep separate from LAA, but technical assistance for land use ordinances. So you'll see in that Qualtrics question several options, and we want your first blush of how important they are. And then we'll follow up over the next few weeks, and we need to report back to the state as the governor's putting together his budget. Because even though a lot of legislators joke about ignoring his budget does become the starting point for discussion in January. So if there are things we care about, now is our time to say, yes, please put that in the budget. We as a league don't take position on specific appropriations, and we usually don't advocate for a specific dollar amount, but we will advocate for the policy that underlines the dollar amount. Okay? Carson, anything else on the Qualtrics side?
No, thanks for filling it out. Again, we'll send this out to everybody either later today or the follow-up email, whatever that goes out. So if there's anything else you think of, please feel free to add your comments to that. If you want to talk to your staff about these concepts and get their thoughts, and then add that in later, we welcome that too. Yeah, just please, you're welcome to fill it out as many times as you want, but please fill it out at least once. We want to make sure that everybody here is represented in that data set.
So if we go out and watch it one more, then it probably 20 seconds to add that.
Yeah, and then eventually get a nice bump from there.
Good. Hot by Sunday.
So, and as always, if you have follow-up questions, email staff, could give us a call, reach out to us as we're building out the concepts to bring back to LPC and then to you on November 4th. So today was to try to get the juices flowing in anticipation of those next couple of meetings as part of the multidimensional chess.
Next is 6 or 7.
Yep, executive director report. I'm going to fly through this because Justin and I have to be with Councilmember Hinton at SUU in 3 hours and 26 minutes to meet with the governor and lieutenant governor at the One Utah Summit. Yeah, we'll
Get
get it.
a ULCT plane, because I don't know how you're making that.
We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it.
Our policies.
Once we
do
get
not
consolidate.
reimburse, traffic tickets or parking tickets.
We should get a plane.
That's the plan.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, league plane. Mayor Walker can fly it.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Level 1, I got one in.
So, the other thing I want to just make reference to in my notes from the past thing, there's an article in the Tribune, we'll send it out in the post email, or the post board meeting email, about the University of Utah entering into a public-private partnership to develop a huge dorm on campus. Checks the box for more housing to help the campus, checks the box for walkability on campus, checks the box for the use of state lands. But the entity that is organizing it is a subsidiary of Blackstone, so it's corporate ownership, but it's also focused on student housing, and they have a specialty nationwide on this student housing. So anyway, fascinating intersection. That was just approved last week. Okay, we'll have that in the follow-up email.
Will the Tampa thing happen?
Okay, yep, that's what we're gonna hit. So executive director report, I'll hit Tampa first since Mayor Walker asked it. Still to be determined. National League of Cities has their city summit in Tampa next month. Tampa was hit by the first hurricane and has a second hurricane pouring down on them.
And it's like bullseye.
Yeah, bullseye to Tampa is supposed to hit later this week, so we're just keeping an eye on it.
And maybe a Cat 5.
Yeah, Mayor Shepherd is running for the president of the National League of Cities.
Second vice president.
Well, eventually.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. You gotta get the number
before
you can vote, yeah. So we're trying to help him as much as possible, but we're all in wait and see mode about the city summit in November.
Their staff did tell me that just as a note, the convention center is 5 feet above sea level and 100 feet from the water. So,
Oh.
There's only 20
and then in a cat 5, water goes up 15 feet.
So normally we try
So
to,
first, don't stay on the first or second floor, just saying.
so normally we try to recruit as many people to go to the NLC event. There are about 20 of us who are going. Stay tuned. Speaking of conferences, I'm proud to report that annual convention, we, as you know, reduced it to 2 full days instead of 2.5 days. We surveyed the membership about that, and Nick texted me.
64% folks responding to the survey said they preferred the 2-day format. Another 20% were indifferent, and only 16% preferred the old format. So that was a validating response for our decision.
Thank you, Nick. And even more validating is we had more attendance than the year before. We have more sponsors and exhibitors. And Katie, thank you to you specifically for building a really phenomenal sponsorship program. We filled the exhibit hall. And so we were able to charge less to our attendees because it was 2 days versus 2.5 days, and we made more money than we did the year before. So from an organizational perspective, we feel like it checked every box. We're proceeding with 2 days next fall as well, based on all of those outcomes. I told you there's the One Utah Summit that Justin and I are leaving for here momentarily. Councilmember Hinton, we'll see you there. We'll probably be a couple minutes late. But we will be seeing legislative leadership down there in the governor's office, and we've been trying to arrange meetings with the league officers to meet with leadership, to have the kind of conversation we just had here with them. So stay tuned. Most of them have been on trade missions the last couple of weeks. So we hope to be able to do that. And then speaking of travel, you mentioned that the homelessness council meets on Wednesday. You'll get your board follow-up email after that meeting because we'll have an update from Mayor Stevenson and from Molly. And then the Office of Homeless Services invited Molly to join a really small group that's going to San Antonio to study the homeless resources and services there. So she'll be there with Wayne Niederhauser and a few others this Thursday and Friday. So she's the only city representative going, right? Right, Molly?
Andrew Johnson.
Oh, Andrew, it's all okay. So two, but it's a group of how many people?
Now to 11.
Okay, but either way, small group, and so great opportunity for her, and that's.
Campus model.
Really go learn.
Right, well, and we'll get for again, that is the policy question of the day that we didn't get to today of policy versus scattered sites that has ramifications on basically everything else. So we'll bring that back in the November meeting. Finally, you have in front of you and those online, we will deliver them to you. You have a pup, speaking of annual, signed by Jim Craig, the speaker.
And I saw some folks already opening them. The reason we did wrap them, sorry to those who did open them, they leave your hands really dirty. So this is what they look like. I decided to sacrifice my own fingers for this, but you can keep them wrapped up if you'd like for a trip.
Well, thank you for your service and thanks for a really tremendous discussion today. Mayor Walker, I'll turn it to you.
I also, really quick, so we did include the orientation book electronically in your email. I have a handful of hard copies if anyone would like them. And please just remember to turn in your conflict of interest form. I have to hold it like this because I touched the puck. To me, before you leave it, or just email it to me as well. Thank you.
No.
Motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're all adjourned.
Perfect. Thank you.
Adjourned, I want to announce